In the previous section, we created our phone app in which we could choose a friend from a list and also add new friend names onto that list. While this seemed to work, a bit more extensive testing will probably reveal some interesting issues that need resolving. For example, when I have an empty list here and I click on Add Name to List and then perhaps type another name like Fred and Add Name to List. When I choose Pick Friend's Name, I've got a gap in my list now, and this obviously is not an ideal situation. Let's just choose Fred. The other problem, of course, is that I could also forget that Tom is in my list, add the name Tom to the list, and now when I pick a friend's name, I've got Tom at the top, I've got a gap that was caused by having a blank line, and I've also got Tom at the bottom of my list. So we're going to have a look at some fixes where we can hopefully improve on our list handling. This here shows how we can deal with preventing the blank names. Instead of adding the item directly to the list, we make a question first of all. If the text box is not empty, then add it to the list. So in other words, we're checking for some content, an actual name having been typed into the box before we attempt to put that into the list. Let's try that out then in our code. So we need to make a decision, and that is done through control. Control has if then and if then else. So I'm going to take an if then and I'm going to snap it in here. If what? Well, I need to make a decision. If, and if I look at my logic, if not. So I want the opposite of this. I don't want the text box to be empty. So if I go and look at my text, is empty is an option. And what don't I want to be empty? I don't want the new name to be empty. So I'm going to take any of these and change it to the text. So this top section is saying if the text box name is empty is not true. In other words, there's some text in it. What do I want to do at that point? I want to do what I did before, which is to add that particular name onto the list. Well, the other thing I'm going to try here is to reset my connection, and then I'm going to connect to the emulator again. So this is effectively restarting the application on the phone. And we'll see what that's done to the lists that we'd already worked with. Let's see what happened to Fred and to Bob if we restart our application. This code doesn't yet deal with the issue of having a name repeated on the list. So you will have to have a look at list handling options and see if you can come up on your own with a solution to checking if a name already exists in the list before allowing it to be added. Clearly, if the name already exists, then we should not be continuing to add it onto the list. So our phone is starting up. It would be nice to have a test plan to check all our options. So we should check what happens with each of our phrases and each of our names. We should also check that we can add new names onto the list and that they work with the phrases. We should test that no empty names can be added to the list. And we should test that no existing names could be added to the list. So a test plan should cover all the possibilities and not just be a simple click a few times, hope for the best, and assume that the rest of the app will work properly. So our application has now loaded and we need to give it some testing. The first thing we will do is check what's happening when we pick a friend's name. And you can see that we have reset the application back to its first load state. So the additional names have not appeared here, but we can use the ones that are there. If I try to add a name to the list with nothing in here, I'm clicking a few times, when I try pick a friend's name, we still appear just to have 3 names on now. So we have removed the problem of empty names being added to the list. If I now type in here and type Fred, add name to list, and we do have an issue here that the keyboard is remaining open, so it would be a good idea to close that before we add things to the list. But now Fred has actually been added and can appear in our phrases.